Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for gathering together for today's video chat, where we're excited to learn and share some of the great work being done through the Participatory Advocacy Research Network, or PARN. My name is Betty Rice, and I'm the Communications Coordinator for Community Campus Engage Canada, or CCECanada, as we like to call ourselves. We're always pleased to present ideas and examples of how partnerships are formed and how they are sustained, and today's conversation will highlight a really great example of relationship building that has a positive impact for all who are a part of it: community partners, individuals, academics, and post-secondaries. It's something that has implications for broader understanding of how we can work together to build authentic, reciprocal partnerships where everyone gains. I'm going to introduce our guests, but first I'd like to take just a moment to say that I am coming to you today from Calgary, Alberta, where I am very fortunate to live. These are the traditional lands of the people of Treaty 7. That's the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda. Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6. All of our presenters today are coming from other parts of Turtle Island, and I'd like to ask Anna Pshnovic and Laura Mullins to do the honors from the East.
Thank you, Betty. So I'm going to share our land acknowledgement that we have worked together as a PARN group, Participatory Advocacy Research Network group, and that where we have engaged with Indigenous peers and colleagues in supporting our development of our land acknowledgement that is meaningful to us and the work that we do. So welcome, everyone. We have come from many different lands from all over Turtle Island. These include the city of St. Catharines, the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, Ariwanda and Aronia, Hamilton, traditional home of the Erie, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee and Mississaugas, and others. The city known as London, traditional home of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron. Toronto, traditional home of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee, and Nipissing First Nations, North Bay, traditional home of the Nipissing Anishinaabe Nation. We acknowledge that these lands and people have been colonized and harm has been caused. We're aware that we live on unceded territory, land that was taken from Indigenous people without their permission and knowledge. We're also aware of the history of residential schools and other ways that past governments used to try to destroy Indigenous people and their ways of living. We all have responsibilities in learning about the traditional lands we live on, and the treaties, histories, and cultures of Indigenous people with whom we share this land. We're all responsible to learn about the strengths and gifts of all Indigenous people, communities today, and for future generations. We're all responsible to take care of Mother Earth and to make sure we leave her gifts for future generations. We're extremely grateful for the use of this land where we have gathered to work, play, and celebrate together, as so many people have before us. We're forever grateful for the beautiful seasons that bring us wonder, and for the trees and the leaves and the birds and the sky and all that has been created for us. PARN is committed to working together towards reconciliation and toward a better relationship with Indigenous people. In PARN, we're also working together to make sure that everyone's voice is heard and included, that everyone's ideas are valued and shared, and that everyone knows that they're important. We commit to bringing the principles of reconciliation and collaboration to our work and play, and to help shape the world towards a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. So today we're gathered to learn more about the Participatory Advocacy Research Network, which we will now refer to as PARN. The goal of PARN is to develop collaborative relationships between allies, students, academic researchers, community partners, and people with lived experience of intellectual and developmental disability, to focus on the development of understanding and addressing issues that affect the quality of life of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We have representatives of each of the, let's call them key groups of the organization, each with their own reason for being part of the group. So I'm going to do some quick introductions for everyone first, and then we'll get into how this initiative was formed, what it does, how it actually works through some examples, and how each sees how they fit into PARN and how it works for them. So I think we should get started with some quick introductions. Lots of voices, and we want to with lived experience. Liz McDonough serves as the chair of the Our Voices Matter Advisory Council. She's also one of the founding members and leaders of the Our Voices Matter group in the Niagara area. Liz believes advocacy is important because everyone needs a say, no matter what. Anyone can learn to advocate for themselves. Yvonne Charlene Spicer lives in London, Ontario, where she is on the New Vision Advocates Committee. Yvonne has a passion for learning with a background in nonprofit organizations, program development, strategic planning, leadership development, and community outreach. Yvonne has spoken loudly for the inclusion of all people, locally and around the world, presenting at political events. Yvonne encourages people to rely on their strengths by championing their successes. Yvonne has been recognized for her advocacy on social issues, especially on the topics of human and disability rights, combating poverty, as well as innovative housing and employment opportunities. Then we have two students with us today. Danny recently completed their Master of Social Work. Their thesis work involved collaborating with adults with lived experience of intellectual disability in order to make infographics about what disability support staff should and should not do. Danny is passionate about ensuring that people with and without lived experiences of various disabilities are able to learn from each other and work together respectfully. Camilla, whose pronouns are she and they, got involved in PARN as a neurodivergent student volunteer. She is a master's student of applied disability studies and a disability advocate. Now on to the community partners. David Nickerson helps strategic projects move important change forward at CARA's Disability Services. He is thrilled to support the voices of self-advocates, both as members of various strategic steering committees as well as Our Own Voices Matter Council. Carolyn Lee Jones. I'm going to move. Oh, yes, Carolyn, you're in the right place. I'm sorry. I thought I had you in the wrong screen there. Has worked in the disability field since 2003 and has an honors degree from Metropolitan University's Disability Studies program. She brings her education and experience to her current role as education coordinator and lived experience associate facilitator, supporting to staff with intellectual and developmental disabilities to use their lived experience to improve programming, research, and accessibility at Surrey Place. Laura Mullins is an assistant professor in the Department of Applied Disability Studies at Brock University. Drawing on her own experiences with disability, her research interests are rooted in transformative approaches aimed to enhance the quality of life for adults living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. She is a registered behavior analyst with more than 20 years of experience within the developmental service sector. And certainly last but not least, Anna Pshnovic is an assistant professor at Nipissing University. Her contribution to PARN was inspired by self-advocate Peter Park and his keynote address, A Conversation with Peter Park, Nothing About Us Without Us, and That Means Research, which addresses the harm and exclusion of persons with intellectual and development disabilities from research, and on inclusive research practices. Anna is also interested in community-first, community-engaged learning and teaching. Now that everyone has been introduced, let's get started. I'd like to begin by asking Anna from Nipissing and Laura from Brock, as well as Yvonne from the New Vision Advocates Committee, to tell us a bit about PARN, how they connected, how the idea was developed, sort of what is PARN, how did it come about. Yvonne, maybe you'd like to start off, and then maybe Anna and Laura can join in as we go. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Very much. Okay, for me, PARN stands for Participatory Advocacy Research Network. As such, we have people who have lived experience of an intellectual or developmental disability. Besides, university students who plays an active role in the work we are doing in advancing inclusive research. PARN has core values that dictate our guiding principles, and it helps in leading the work they have set out to accomplish. We are building connections with various partners and core stakeholders to advance the research and advocacy goals of the intellectual or developmental disability community. PARN is a group of self-advocates living with intellectual and developmental disabilities, allies, and researchers who work together on research focused on understanding and addressing issues that affect the quality of life of the developmental disability community. As a committee, we have developed the following ground rules and expectations to help create safe and inclusive spaces and will follow in all community activities. PARN has designed presentations to share with various organizations, including the Ontario Association for Developmental Disabilities, Research, Special Interest Group, and with this, we have been able to showcase why having people with unique abilities included in all aspects of the inclusive research initiatives.
So Yvonne, maybe did you want to tell us how it was developed and how it came about as well?
What came about was through Photo Voice Project. That the Photo Voice Project was a group of people who have such as yourself, Laura, and also can't remember her name, where an advocate, yourself, and others came together to develop the Voter Voice Project to understand and also talk about their experiences through pictures and through with the when we had the COVID lockdown, as it were.
Do you want me to elaborate about that project, and then I'll go back to you?
And thank you.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity during the beginning of the pandemic to conduct a participatory action research approach using what's called Photo Voice, where participants become collaborators in the research process. We actually had some funding to be able provided through Brock University to pay 13 participants with adults with intellectual disabilities from across Ontario to be part of the project virtually. So we were able to give them some tablets and other resources to participate in the project. So we came together, we did some training on what is the research process, and then the participants took pictures during the first winter that we had during the pandemic. And through that process, participants also took journals reflecting on those experiences. And then we met regularly as a team to talk about the pictures and talk about what it was like for all of us. We each also had an opportunity to work together to develop what were the key themes or what were the key messages that we really wanted, that the participants particularly really wanted to share about what their life was like during the pandemic. We found that people with developmental disabilities were vastly disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And there was lots of ableist assumptions and practices that were put in place associated with some of those restrictions. However, we also found a lot that the participants were very resilient and marshaling and using all the resources that they had in order to develop connections. So through that project, we got an opportunity to develop and collaborate as a team. And we've had an opportunity to showcase this research at some online events, a night at the museum in Niagara, as well as a few conferences.
Anna, do you have anything to add? I'm kind of curious about, for Anna and Laura, how was PARN born out of? I mean, was it a result of the Photo Voice Project, or was it something that had started beforehand? How did you two find each other? I mean, you're both in Ontario, but you're in different universities. How did sort of all of this come together?
Well, funny enough, Laura and I actually met in grad school. So, and we also worked in similar circles in practice and community. So we sort of, I think, came to some of these pieces naturally. One of the things that I was really excited about and really interested about was developing a community of practice. So Laura is really lucky because she gets to work in a department that is disability focused. And I am sort of a lone wolf in my department in a school of social work, where we often only have a one-off person who focuses on disability, right? And the topic of disability in social work education and intellectual disability in particular is still a very kind of marginalized topics. So when we have folks that are interested in doing the work, we want to find each other because we want to build community with each other so that we're all kind of have an opportunity to work together because there's so very few of us. So I was kind of looking for that community of practice where I would be connected to other researchers who are really interested in working with people with lived experience of intellectual disability, but really interested in research with that particular community and build networks. The other layer for me was I also was very, very interested in changing the paradigm of doing research conferences and also doing research and including people with lived experience, not as just like what we call and Peter Park calls a subjects of research, but really seeing how we can work together with people with lived experience and really center the research and the issues that are important to them and use our research to serve the community, to meet community goals, so that we can develop things like accessible language briefs or other things that people can also use for their own advocacy efforts, so that our research in an academic setting, in a university setting, is not just we do research and then it sits on a shelf collecting dust. And that was something that was really important for me, the community of practice, and also making sure that when we do research, we're working with co-researchers with intellectual disabilities and having conferences where people with lived experience are part of our team who are also sharing the research findings as well.
So key importance is having active participants from all sectors in the research.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was invited to join those conversations around developing this community of practice. And exactly the point is we knew that we needed to kind of co-develop this space as opposed to us creating it from there. When we were looking on the table, there was largely academics and students at the table. So we thought we need to really reinvent the way that we're going to approach this in order to make it fully inclusive. And fortunately, at that time, I had also received a grant to be able, through the Vice President's Building Capacity Grant, through the Lifespan Development Institute at Brock University, to be able to host the formal exhibit of the Photo Voice project. So that was supposed to be our major event where we got to showcase all this work. And so through the conversations, we decided to pivot it a little bit to be able to host this one-day event that was both allowing us to showcase all the wonderful work that they had done through the Photo Voice Voices Lost in Crisis project as an example of the project. So we highlighted the results and as well as the process. And then also we're able to do some make it a launch of the PARN network and doing some strategic planning as well.
Important to get the word out on what it is that you're actually trying to do. I mean, that's half the battle, is making sure people know about it and people can join the network then and get it more engaged. So sounds like it was a great vehicle to sort of open up PARN from some exposure and to get people to know who the group was and what you do. So that's good. Let's talk about the need for this sort of a network. I'd like to go to David and Carolyn, Liz and Yvonne, if you could weigh into. Let's talk about why a network like this is important. David, you want to kick that off?
Sure. Thanks. Great to be here. And I think for me, participating at PARN helped me to see that high-level professional grade research is possible, true co-research with people with lived experience, which is its own expertise, as well as with the academic rigor of, making it, making the conclusions robust. And so it's that partnership and watching the presentations where clearly, watching people like Yvonne present and other people present with their academic partners, where it's clear that the research was their own. It wasn't just something where they were reading off the card. And so that was significant to see that level of rigor and depth and meaning making, and that as an agency that provides services, we have the beginnings of some of those capabilities, but we could now with confidence take these methods and tools and relationships and really elevate our ability to co-create, co-design, and co-research together in a really deep way, where we feel like there's a safety net, where we don't have to figure out things the hard way. So that, I think, is one of the reasons that there's a need for an organization like PARN. It raises the bar for the rest of us to say this is possible, and here you can do it too with us. So yeah, that's my thought.
Carolyn, what about you? What do you think about this? Why is this important?
There's so much need for this kind of network. So historically, people with lived experience were involved in research, but primarily as subjects, not researchers themselves. When we're doing this kind of work, it's so important for people with lived experience to be central to this kind of work. The network is playing such a major role in changing and challenging how research is done, and it's so exciting to be part of all of this. Really, what the PARN network brings is people and ideas together with the common goal of having advocates at the forefront of research for them and about them. I love the co-design approach with people lived experience leading. So, and I love the fact that it's, this network really works from the whole ideas from the start that, they're the ones that are involved in all aspects with research. They're the ones coming up with the research questions, they're doing the work, they're learning the skills. It's really active work, not passive work. And I think this is why the network is so important, because it celebrates all these sort of learning opportunities and skills and collaboration from, so different many participants to make really, really important work. And lastly, and I think it really just comes back to community, which I know was kind of spoken about previously already. The PARN network and this kind of network is so important for building partnerships. We're so much stronger together when we're united through something.
Come back to her a little bit later, but I'd like to jump over to Liz and Yvonne now and ask them about why this sort of network is important. Liz, do you want to give us some input into why you think PARN is important?
So are we answering the question, why is there a need for the network, or?
Yeah.
So I put down, it is all at the same time researching, advocating, and listening to people's individual life living experiences. And it's important because it includes diverse people and people with disabilities.
Great. And Yvonne, would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Betty. Yes, I would like to. Okay, so there is a need for this work, as not everyone or business is looking at this as something that is needed. They see that people, even if they have a unique challenge, that we are not seen or capable of doing anything that is remotely important when we are. We are people like everyone else. We have the same skills or abilities who can just do as much as everyone else. PARN is something where it stands for inclusivity, where it allows everyone, no matter what their abilities, to be included in all shapes and sizes. We need PARN because we can make changes to life, government, and research on various tasks that we feel is important to all people's lives. There is nothing like PARN anywhere that comes even close to what we all have worked together on to showcase that gifts, talents, and change that needs to occur from the feedback we have received that needs to be addressed.
So very true. And it comes back to that nothing for us without us, that everybody needs to be a part of that network and a participating voice. No question about that. Let's move on to the next question. I'm going to flip over to the students now, Danny and Camilla. Could you talk about how you got involved in PARN, why it's important to you, and sort of what it's meant to you in terms of your studies and learning and where you might go in your careers? Danny, do you want to start?
Absolutely. So I'm one of the student research assistants that was hired to help prepare for the the PARN research camp. We had that back in October. So I learned about this opportunity from my master's thesis supervisor, Ann Fudge Shormans, who is one of PARN's faculty collaborators. Us students were hired after the research assistants with lived experience, and they were the ones who made the hiring decisions. So after I had a job interview, basically like any other job, I was successful in this interview and I started working for PARN in April of 2024. Each of the student research assistants and the research assistants with lived experience co-chaired a subcommittee that was part of planning the logistics for the research camp. And so I worked with someone named Teresa Somerton. Teresa and I worked together to co-chair the transportation and accommodations for the research camp. And I would summarize what I've learned through PARN as a little bit of an analogy. So I would say that accessibility is a team sport. And just because you think that you've made something accessible doesn't mean that it is. If we want to continue this analogy of accessibility as a team sport, then I would say that Teresa, my co-chair, is absolutely a star player, the MVP. Because of her experiences with advocacy and her lived experiences with various disabilities, including vision and hearing loss, Teresa always keeps accessibility in the front of her mind in a way that I think a lot of people that don't have those lived experiences are not able to, simply because they just don't have that kind of lived experience and information about it. So a quick example of this is that there's a lot of depth to, I think, the way Teresa understands accessibility. And, someone like me might think about, we're looking at the hotels, and we might think about accessibility in terms of, is there an elevator that people can go up in order to get to their rooms? Teresa goes that extra step further and asks, is the room close enough to the elevator? Is it not too far for the person to get there once they've actually gone up the elevator? So there's a little bit more experience and extra thought that goes into it just because of those lived experiences. So I think I feel like I really learned a lot from Teresa because she just has so much insight into accessibility. And there was really a lot that I was able to learn from her. I also felt that this kind of idea of accessibility as a team sport and people being able to bring their various experiences into having a deeper understanding was brought up during the research camp as well, because one of the workshops did an overview on doing more accessible letters of information and consent forms when you're doing research. And the workshop facilitators had two different examples of these letters of information that talk about the studies. And although they had one that was clearly less accessible than the other, the participants that were at the workshop actually had a lot of suggestions for how even the good letter of information could be improved. So to me, this really demonstrated that even though the facilitators were very thoughtful and experienced with doing inclusive research, having even more team members with lived experiences to help them construct these documents was really, really important. I would also say that because accessibility is a team sport, communication is one of the most important parts of it, and finding out the best way to communicate that works for the whole team is a must. This might mean finding ways to reword what you're talking about so that you're being as clear as possible. And although this might seem kind of obvious, it's important to make sure that you're checking in to make sure everything is clear, because it can be very, very easy to fall into a trap where you're assuming that you're being clear, but things are actually very confusing or overwhelming and people are intimidated to speak up. I do think that the people who are a part of PARN are very, very good at communicating when things are confusing or overwhelming, but that might be something that, depending on the team that you're working with, you might need to think about a little bit more. And I can pass this on back to Betty and Camilla.
I liked what you said. I think it's really important to, that communication is key for everybody at every level within this group and the organization, for everybody to be able to have those conversations, to correct if something's not quite right, to adjust where you need to. Those things are really critically important when you're trying to bring together people from so many different parts of the same piece who come at it from a different perspective, right? I mean, I think that's really, really critical. Camilla, what about, let me ask you, Danny, what's your institution? Where are you studying?
Oh, yes. I recently finished at McMaster University doing a Master's of Social Work and Critical Analysis.
Congratulations. And
Thank
Camilla,
you.
where's your institution? Where are you coming to us from?
I'm studying at Brock University. I'm doing the Masters of Applied Disability Studies in the same department as Laura.
Fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of how you've been involved with PARN and what it's meant for your studies and your career and what you're looking at doing?
Yeah, so I actually became engaged with PARN after Laura and other PARN team members visited one of my classes and they discussed the research camp and what they wanted to do. And I instantly emailed to volunteer because it felt like something that I really wanted to do. Laura's research and work to incorporate perspectives of individuals with lived experience caught my interest a lot. And so I was very eager to participate in this. During my engagement in PARN, I discovered that PARN is more than a research network. It felt more like a community. So for me, during the camp, it seemed like we were all part of one big community advocating for inclusiveness, and everyone was there to support each other. I believe that the hierarchies in like educational institutions may be really difficult at times, making it challenging to express one's point of view, but it really didn't feel that way with the camp. I felt like professors, book writers, researchers, public presenters, and executives were all people who seemed much more experienced than me, yet they made me feel really comfortable talking to them. So it just felt like a really nice community. I haven't been to a conference before this one, but I feel like I cannot go to a conference that doesn't feel like this again.
That's really great to hear. I think everybody comes in from a different perspective and adds to the conversation, and that's really critical. We've heard a lot about the October event, and so I'd like to go to Yvonne and Anna and Laura next and talk a little bit about some of the activities that have taken place. Maybe start with that event because obviously it was a big one. I don't know which of the three of you wants to talk about it, but tell us a little bit about what it looked like that event in October.
I think maybe I'll start with Betty with the PARN launch for a couple of seconds, and then I'll pivot to the research camp because the idea for the research camp really came out of the work that was done before. So we have launched PARN last year, or was it 2022? I can't remember now. It feels like a long time ago, but 2023, and it was really exciting. And we had this vision following Laura's research, photo voice project, Voices Lost in Crisis, to have a launch of this event. And that particular event had over 55 folks with lived experience, students, academic researchers, community partners come and just be thinking about and trying to understand and think about what this PARN could look like. And at that time, not only did we engage in Laura's or review Laura's research, but we also had an opportunity to do a tiny little bit of strategic planning where we kind of were thinking together in terms of like, what is it that we want PARN to be? So the project as PARN as a project wasn't something that we came to people with. We came with like an original idea or an idea, and then we worked together, kind of shape it into what is it that we could, what it could potentially look like. So as part of that, we also applied for a grant, which would then turn into the actual camp, the research camp. But there's kind of three interrelated ideas that came out of that, which were a website to share resources and make connections, a community of practice, which is the piece that we had talked about earlier, and this idea to host a research camp. And one of our collaborators, Ashley, she's a person with lived experience, said that camp gave me a sense of belonging. I can go anywhere without help of somebody. I can even go canoeing and sailing, which are my two favorite things to do at camp. I don't think I would be half the young lady I am if it wasn't for the camps that I attended. So really had a passion for camp and saw a camp-like environment as a place where we could have fun together, play together, enjoy activities together, share meals together, but also learn with each other as well. So I'm going to stop there. Maybe Laura can talk about the research camp.
Yeah, so following the launch event, we were able to secure a social sciences and humanities connection grant, which we required matching fund from several community partners and community organizations, as well as the university, in order to be able to host this camp. That also included hiring the 5 self-advocates with lived experience, as well as the 5 students, as Tani described, to co-chair several different committees that were responsible for planning the actual event. So the In addition to the Transportation and Accommodations Committee, we also had the Workshop Planning Committee that was responsible for overseeing the 14 different workshops that we had that were all co-facilitated by someone with lived experience and another researcher. We also had the Meals and Hospitality Committee that was responsible for doing the meals, but also creating the social space of the camp as well. And then lastly, we also had a Promotions and Registration Committee that was responsible for our social media, but also making sure we got all the information from everyone. And there was an Accessibility Committee that was kind of working with all of the different committees to establish those goals. We also had an opportunity to host a leadership retreat in June, where we were actually able to come together for the first time as this planning committee to learn about some of the steps that people would go through when they're doing research, be able to collaborate and develop connections as a team, and then developed that a registration survey that had input from all the different people. So that was a really unique opportunity to really bond as a team, which then carried forward into the actual camp itself. So at the actual research camp, there were 25 adults with lived experience that were part of those 14 different workshops. They focused on understanding inclusive research right from the very beginning of what is inclusive research, what are the steps of going through the research project and leadership. We also had conversations about ethics, consent forms, and then we had an opportunity to break out into different groups to learn about 5 different types of inclusive research methods. So in addition to photo voice, we also had eco maps, arts-based approaches, technology, and ways of adapting other traditional modes of research. And then we moved into knowledge mobilization. How do we share this research? And then did some more strategic planning as well. And maybe I'll turn it over to Yvonne, because you have some specific examples of some of those workshops that you wanted to share as well.
Hey, thank you very much. PARN has hosted activities at camp. They just recently had at Brock University. One of the activities was a skit on parenting and having children, but their parents or children's aid thought otherwise, that they could raise a child just because they have a disability. Some of the actors and actresses were people from PARN who dressed up and portrayed parts to showcase how this scene would be. During the presentation, the audience was allowed to come in and take over or change the scene from a negative to a positive one. Another activity was singing and doing some actions to a song that was playing in the background with the assistance from Madeline, who is a teacher at the University of Manitoba. With the music, I was able to sway my hands in certain ways, feel the rush of the music coursing through my veins, to understanding what the music was telling me and have me think in different ways. There was a session on inclusive art where everyone could draw and what they think PARN is and what it's going to look like to them. For me, I drew a picture of a camp where everyone could go and have fun with no limitations in their way. Camp I have been in the past where I was able to do many things that I wouldn't have gotten to do before. I don't draw pictures that often, but when I had the chance to do it in a session with other people, it gave me the opportunity to bring my dreams and ideas to life. We have hosted a community of practice before where we had organizations who are connected as partners with PARN come and present on what they do. One of them I remembered was when we invited L'Arche, Canada, with Lori Van Holt. Another member came to discuss about exciting opportunities they are currently working on with the federal government on having people with lived experience involved in all aspects of any project they are working on. I know in the future we will continue to see other organizations come and present their views on what they're involved in the community in which they live in.
Thanks for that. That was really interesting, and it sounds like it was a wonderful, wonderful project. I'd like to talk a little bit about I'd like to address the community partners. Ask, what have you learned through being part of PARN and being involved in this sort of an organization? I think I'm going to toss that to Camila, David, Carolyn, Liz, and Yvonne. If you've got something that you'd like to, Carolyn, we'll catch you later. If you've got something you'd like to contribute, to let us know. Sort of, what does it mean to be part of this? Anybody want to go first? Let's go with Camila.
Yeah. For me as a student, I felt like I had a student position at camp, and I felt like I was being heard. For me, it can be difficult to communicate sometimes because of my invisible disability. And so I chose to wear my sunflower lanyard at camp, and it felt like I was treated with care and respect. And even wearing the lanyard sparked some conversations. Uh, I'm generally casted aside when I go out places, but during camp, I felt like everyone made an attempt to include me, which made me feel very happy. I also enjoyed being able to have more talks with other community members, and I feel like I don't have that opportunity every in my everyday life, as other people that I talk with are not community members with lived experience and all of that. And I believe that connecting to other community members in person benefited me a lot. I feel like I was able to develop relationships and learn more about community-led projects, and it was really great for me.
That's fantastic. Liz, looks like you had to head somewhere. Can you hear me? And would you like to tell us a little bit about why you think being part of the event in October and just being part of PARN in general is important for you?
Yeah, so I wrote down a couple things and I have another thing to add after this, but I said I have used the 7 steps of leadership since the PARN research camp and the leadership retreat. We did the 7 steps of leadership at the PARN camp, and it really helped explain it better so I can use it more. It has helped me a lot in my leadership goals to set sorry, just to step up and not be so scared to advocate for my needs and for what other people need. As well, it really helped me being at camp because I had some issues at camp and everybody was so accepting to come and help me through those issues. So I kind of broke my chair while I was at camp, trying to get out of the bathroom stall. The stall door, I unlocked it and it unlocked, but it didn't want to open. And so that was the last straw that day for me. And I came out really frustrated and I kind of sat on the ground and just started bawling my eyes out. And many people came and rushed over to help me. Laura and a couple of the students, and there were many. To name them all is unbelievable because there was just so many. And to remember all the names, I just can't do. But yeah, so it just made me feel so good that they were all accepting of me, even though I was having a bad day. And they didn't care I was having a bad day. They were just more willing to help me get over what I needed to get over.
So a very supportive environment.
You very.
And that's important. That really is critical that everyone is supporting each other. Did you have some other thoughts you wanted to add to that, or shall I go over to Yvonne now?
You can go to, that's okay. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yvonne, what do you think? Why was this event and just sort of in general being part of PARN, why is it important for you?
What I've learned is that we need to continue the conversation and engagements like we just had last month in October. Many people enjoy the collaboration and conversations that we all had in learning about inclusive research. I found that I was being included all the conversations and not as a token who needs to volunteer and not be taken for granted and not being taken for granted or granted. I was being valued as someone who has needs, hopes, and feelings that I can contribute to the work that lies ahead of us. I have found that with this opportunity, people with lived experience are being included in the research as we are able to do the interview process by creating the job descriptions with the assistance of Laura Mullins. We are able to create the questions we want to ask to the prospective interviewers who applied for the position. We have the abilities to hire them and work together with them in completing daily tasks that we have ahead of us. If I was working in research with another organization, I wouldn't have these opportunities as we are seen and as not capable, which we are. And we need to be seen and heard as people to be included always in research and in the developmental services sector.
Absolutely. Great perspectives. Really appreciate that. David, what about as a community partner? Right? Were you involved in the October event and some of the previous ones, and sort of where are you seeing PARN fit into the work that you do?
Yeah, thanks, Betty, and thanks everyone. I I wanted to piggyback a bit on what something Camilla said earlier about community and a number of our staff. So I've chatted with a number of our staff who had attended PARN as well, including our research team, and they emphasized how PARN is relationally driven. So as much as there are really serious research objectives and there's a lot of rigor to the process, it's really about those relationships and the community that PARN has established and continues to grow. So that's exciting for us. And it gives us an opportunity to continue to partner with these same awesome people here that you see today. Also, that one of the things we learned at PARN is the developmental sequence of workshops. And, it was just absolutely genius where, okay, we do this little low entry level, low risk engagement activity at a table. And then we think, boy, wouldn't it be cool if that activity also had this? And then the next activity was that step up. And so we're looking at even our own internal conferences a little bit differently and how we might leverage some of that sequencing of increasing safe space, but still increasing in depth and involvement. So that's one part of it. And then a lot of the methods, the research methods. So Liz referred to the 7 leadership steps. We're going to be leveraging that for our steering committees where we already have self-advocates involved. Photo voice we've done in the past around elections, but then we're looking at how might we use that around some other kinds of engagements. The art research is a great opportunity for again, having something that's not verbal only, highly visual. And I think, let me just think if there's anything else from our team perspective. But yeah, the elevating, giving us tools that we can use with confidence moving forward is phenomenal. That's all I
And
got.
that's the
And again, we're at our organization, we're really, really pushing and really, really lifting up, that lived experience voice. So these were answered in collaboration with my team at Surrey Place, who does a lot of our research and our lived experience work. So we learned so much in the last sort of few short days that we were at the PARN research camp. It was such a fantastic experience. From my team, they shared that it's so helpful to know that there's other people out there doing this kind of work. And it was just really, really uplifting for them to know that there's people out there who want to teach them how to do this work, believe in them to do this work. And, just how to support in such a huge way, in such an important way. It's a big recognition. And it was really a great opportunity to learn different research skills that maybe we weren't necessarily thinking about before. We realized as we were at the research camp that we were kind of getting stuck already in very formal traditional research methods. And there's so many other methods out there. The photo voice has come up a few times, really looking at how we can make accessible technology, how we can reach others. So that's really how we've benefited. And we just came back from the PARN research camp with so much energy, so much excitement about future research, huge confidence boost. My staff are so eager to do their own research and really, challenge people's, ideas and expectations about what research is and who can be a researcher. So we're really, really excited to, for the future, right, to come back to, the PARN research events and the camps and, learning together and, sharing, the next steps, the next sort of level and the sort of the future of what, this kind of research can look like.
It sounds like it's going really well, but there are always, obviously, with everything that we do, there are challenges. So I wonder if maybe Danny, Liz, Laura, if you'd like to give a little bit of insight into some of the challenges that you've come across as you're trying to pull this network together. Maybe Anna too chime in. Danny, do you want to go first and tell us a little bit about what you see as some of the challenges, maybe either in attracting students to become engaged, because that's always a really big challenge, or whether it just has to do with some logistics, or what you might see as some of the challenges that you've come across as this network has grown.
Absolutely. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about some of the work that we did as the Transportation and Accommodation Committee. And before I kind of spoke about how I feel like the work that we've done is a bit like a team sport. However, I think one of the challenges is that although we want this to be a team sport, there were some tasks that weren't really conducive to working as a team. So that sometimes made it feel a little bit like, even though our goal is to make sure that we are collaborating and working together as closely as possible with all of our co-chairs, sometimes that wasn't always feasible. So one example of this is as part of the Transportation and Accommodation Committee, we had to do some kind of very nitty-gritty budget discussion and talk. So there was some like back and forth about that, and that wasn't always done in the most collaborative way. That might have been a little bit of a personal weakness, but I think that was something that some of the other subcommittees might have faced as well, where our goal and our ethos is to make sure that we are working inclusively and collaboratively, but sometimes because of some of the tasks that we needed to do, that wasn't always 100% feasible to act on. One other challenge that I kind of reflected on was back in June when we attended the leadership retreat. There were some challenges in terms of we had a full day workshop that we were doing, and we had a little bit of a challenge making it so that we were able to balance our need for flexibility and doing things on a time scale that worked for everybody with our goal of doing this one day workshop where we covered everything that we wanted to do. So in general, I think in PARN, we are able to spread things out and meet access needs, but I think that sometimes when we have compressed timelines or very, very specific goals that we want to do in a very short time period, there can be challenges meeting those access needs while also hitting everything that we want to do in a short period of time. And I'm happy to pass this on to other people who would like to speak on some of our challenges.
Definitely a challenge. And I think when you're trying to bring, I was going to use the word disparate, but you really aren't, because you're all working towards a common goal, yet you're all coming at it from a different direction and trying to coordinate timing, working in the academy, working with community partners, working with students, just trying to make all of those things work it's a logistical challenge. There's no question about that. Liz, what do you think about some of the challenges that you've seen in PARN in terms of trying to build this network and trying to move forward?
I said one of the things is getting things explained properly. So example one was when we were at the explain properly or taught properly sometimes. So one example was when we were at the leadership retreat, for example, the 7 steps. It was done really quickly, and so it wasn't explained properly, so I don't think we all understood it. And then when we got to the camp, it was done so much more better. And once I learned it at the camp, I was like, ding dong, light bulb went on, click, 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 right? So sometimes getting things explained properly, or I guess at someone's level of understanding is a big challenge. And I don't think that's meant to happen at all times, but it does.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that comes with continued interaction? As long as you keep talking together and you keep building together and people start to understand more what the needs of each of the partners are? Do you think that's something that probably as the group goes on becomes stronger?
I think so,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Laura and Anna, what about from an academic perspective and the work that you're trying to do in bringing everybody into the research community and just the work that you're doing? What are some of the challenges that you've found?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I kind of think about these challenges as well as the lessons that I've learned from these challenges. So one of the challenges I faced was trying to ensure that as somebody responsible for trying to help coordinate this, we were hearing everyone's voices. There was a lot of people involved in our steering committee, and even our planning committee was quite large, about 20 people in total, in addition to the or 10 extra people in addition to the research assistants that were hired as part of it. So trying to solicit and ensure that we are hearing all the different voices while knowing that they're all often going to come with different perspectives and ideas. And so in that process, we kept having to take a step back and how did we make sure that we were strategically like centering the voices of those with lived experience and constantly coming back to what was our goal and vision and what can we accomplish with this specific time at this in this specific time. It was difficult to try to make sure we were balancing all of those different accommodation needs because there were quite diverse needs among several people that were part of the group. Sometimes we needed to engage in very creative advocacy and problem solving to ensure that we were addressing some problems that came up. We had to do some creative problem solving to ensure our people with lived experience, some that identify as self-advocates, got adequately compensated within the terms of the limits of the grant itself. So we had to do some maneuvering there in order to make sure that they were getting the compensation that they rightly deserved for everything they put into it. And trying to make sure that we planned as much as we could to think about all the different potential problems. We were able to do a lot of things in terms of accessibility, including like CART services, the live transcription, ASL. We had lots of all the resources printed as well as available ahead of time, people available to take notes. So we tried to invest as much accessibility within it. But knowing that there's still, I think one of the lessons is no matter how hard you plan, there will be problems. I think it's not. And so you can only plan so much. So when those problems come, I think that kind of that example that Liz was sharing about her wheelchair, we just have to rally around and pivot and work towards how to make sure that that's included, knowing that there are some unforeseen things that happen. I think also
Flexibility is the key.
yeah, for sure. I think that other piece around adapting to the timeline. So we had also some constraints around our timelines and moving things forward, which at sometimes meant we moved forward with things when they were not quite as fully fleshed or quite as fully accessible as we had hoped that they might have possibly been. And so lesson learned is don't push forward and make sure that we're, when we set that stage, try to be as open and receptive to knowing that there might be some challenges. We were able to get feedback on what things didn't quite work. And I think that's exactly what you had mentioned before. So that ongoing communication and feedback that we were able to provide was why that workshop was so successful in the end, because we were able to work with what we had learned through that process. I think the last thing that I just wanted to mention is keeping track of that budget. And so it really kind of relates to Danny's point there. I was accountable as the bottom line person. We can't go over budget because there is no extra money that we have to find. So, and we had actually been able to secure a grant that was larger than what's typically expected. Only in that it was actually very well justified as to why we needed those extra funds, which particularly was to be able to pay the people with lived experience to be part of it, which meant that although new ideas came up and although different things happened, bottom line, we didn't really have extra money. So we were kind of constantly trying to work within the budget we had. We had to have conversations about how many we can reasonably do, because we're ultimately kind of kept to that. So there was that restriction, meant for a lot of keeping track of a lot of moving pieces, but we were able to do it. So with a lot of hard work.
Well, it sounds like the important thing is that all of you here are doing something new. I mean, you're breaking new ground and you're doing something that's changing the landscape, and that's really, really important. So I think before we sort of wrap things up, I'd like to kind of go around the group and ask you what advice you'd give to somebody someplace else who might like to build a network like this. What are the sort of the key things that you've learned that you might be able to give as pieces of advice moving forward? Maybe Anna, can I start with you, Anna, and tell me what you think? What have you learned that if you could give a piece of advice to somebody else who's thinking about trying to start a network like this, what should they do?
Definitely be thinking about who's around the table when you come up with that idea, and very quickly think about who needs to be a part of the table as well and sit at the table with you. So that again, the earlier you can engage people and the earlier you can involve people, the better, because then you're coming up together and co-constructing things together, as opposed to you having an idea that's fully formed and then you're trying to get somebody else on board with that idea. So for me, that was, we kind of had this idea of PARN being of service to the community, but we didn't necessarily know what that could look like, and we really wanted to and needed to hear from the community as to what a responsive kind of project like PARN could look like, right? Rather than us assuming what the needs are and then trying to present it and folks being like, well, you don't get me at all, so why am I going to be involved in the first place? So sort of like what Danny has highlighted earlier as well, just in terms of co-collaborating together, co-constructing together, working in relation with each other, which is again what David has highlighted as well. So those to me, the most important pieces. And also like asking for help, but also reaching out to others. So we have collaborators now in Manitoba, which is really exciting, in addition to Ontario, and seeing how we can grow the network a little bit more. I think our next goal is to engage a little bit more with northern rural communities in Ontario themselves to see how we can build those networks and relationships with people. So I'm going to stop there. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like if you're going to build a network like this, you've got to make sure you're including all the stakeholders at the ground level as things begin. You can't bring people in as you go. It has to start at the bottom. David, what about you? What if you could give a piece of advice to a community organization that's thinking of becoming part of this, what would you say?
And take a learning stance. This is where expertise exists that is not you'll be surprised at what you learn and how much you grow professionally and personally. And you don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel. Just come and join PARN, putting in a plug.
There you go. Danny, what about you as a student and someone who's becoming more involved in this? What piece of advice would you give to students who might want to become part of an organization like this? What would you say to them?
Overall, I would say be flexible and be open to learning from everybody around you. You may have academic training, you may have your own lived experiences to draw on, but at the end of the day, it's the people around you that will really help you grow and learn more. And that's really the whole strength of being part of a network, is learning from the other people that are in the network with you.
Which is a big learning for us, is there's a lot of people doing this work, and it's okay to sort of ask and kind of put yourself out there. And just, I think it's come up already, like just do it, just try it out, try to make those networks, just have those conversations. Everyone that we've worked with so far has been so welcoming, sharing resources, ideas, experiences. It's such a beautiful community that's happening right now, and I'm sure there's lots of other people out there as well that would love to be involved or would be excited to know that this exists. So I'm just go for it, and put yourself out there, maybe be a little vulnerable, be willing to work together, share ideas, lots of feedback back and forth, and just know that this is a really big learning experience, but we're learning and growing together to do this really amazing, important work.
Fantastic. Liz, what do you think? If you could give a piece of advice to community members, participants in an organization like this, what do you think is most important? Liz, do you have some thoughts? Thanks.
Ask the ones that are already doing it and trust in them because they've already started the group or a group. Don't just take the bull by the rings and try it yourself.
So maybe the next step for somebody who'd be interested is to connect with PARN to learn more about how you've gone about what you're doing. So, Laura, what do you
Yeah.
think? What do you think if you could offer a piece of advice to someone in another part of the country or another country who wants to start something like this? What do they need to think of first?
I think you've already, like, a lot of these ideas are really great and really important in order to be able to develop this network. I think the big thing is do it. There's a lot of fear. Like, we always have these great ideas and we want to do it, but then a lot of fears associated with we're going to make mistakes. We might not have done it the right way. Come in, and they can impede us from being able to, like, actually go forward and engage in those conversations. And I think developing relationships with people and knowing that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Like, I get called out for mistakes all the time, but I listen to them, learn, and then we move forward to try to fix it and move forward again. So it's a learning process, and you have to be reflective and open to that. And really just don't let that stop you from jumping in. And
Camilla, what do
yes,
you think? How is being part of PARN sort of helped you in your studies, in your life? What has it meant to you to be part of it?
I think it really motivated me to be part of more things like this and to just continue to be part of PARN in the future. And I feel like I really want other communities, other parts of the country, other countries to do something like this. I I think I was talking in my table at the camp at the October event that we should bring it internationally. I studied in the Dominican Republic and they have a lot of growth to do, and I know a lot of people that would really like to do something like this in the Dominican Republic. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I should let them know, here's what we've done, here's what you could do. And I feel like a lot of communities around the world will benefit from having a PARN.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's a simple, transferable model. And it's adaptable, which is important too, because you're going to go into different cultures and different scenarios. But being able to take the core of what you've done and transfer it over to another place, another situation, it's so important to see that a network like that can be built. Yvonne, are you ready to talk to us a little bit? Go for it.
Ready. Thank you very much. So what I have to say is what advice I would give to anyone is interested in putting something like this together, is that having people with lived experience and getting involved in all aspects of putting anything like this together can be involved with the hiring, interview process, having people involved in everything we do and in the project, not just as a token, but as someone who's passionate and is paid for the work we do. We all have unique experiences where we can collaborate on various projects and ideas to bring to the table. We can educate people about our experiences with PARN and how they can see this as an exciting opportunity. Not just me, but we all can have, no matter their disability, as this is a worthwhile endeavor that I've seen that I didn't know about before until I met Laura and people from Brock University. I realized that when I look back at what I accomplished with PARN, it's been very inclusive because there has been unique abilities of people like me who are invited and have experiences as an advocate to understand accessible plain language and how it can assist with the work that lies ahead of us. There was a launch event in February of 2022 where we hosted an event at Brock University in Pond Inlet, which it was available virtually and in person. Various advocacy groups and students from several universities can always have something like this together. No matter where you go, it can always open up a exciting opportunities. It can also have people with various talents and gifts to come to the table and, to develop something for themselves. So I'd say after we had this event last month, that we have learned lots and that we can teach and do presentations at conferences or other events to engage with the communities and show them a different way of doing things that maybe they never thought of.
That's fantastic. So it's translatable, it's transferable. It just needs to be shared is ultimately what it comes down to. I do have one last question. Everybody's wearing matching t-shirts. Who wants to tell me about the t-shirts? Who's going to tell me? Anna, do you want to tell me what the t-shirts are about?
I was going to ask Yvonne or Liz to see if Yvonne or Liz wanted to comment on our purple shirts.
Okay. I'd say the purple shirts stand for PARN, Participatory Advocacy Research Network. And it all stands for how we put this together. And now we've connected with various groups that now remember what they were taught about the 7 steps of leadership. And now that's going out to communities and they know how to use it. So the t-shirt, it's almost like a reminder on what we taught them. Liz, would you like to say something?
I can just
Nope,
add
she's
that
good.
we were really excited to be able to have the shirts because they also acted as a symbol about the community itself. So every single person that was in the space wore up one of the PARN research t-shirts. So it was an inclusive space where everybody that was a part of it got to wear this. So it was not that there was presenters up there wearing formal clothes and then campers as part of it. We all got a chance to wear them, be included, and take on different roles throughout the whole event. So it was a really special opportunity to be that thing that promoted community, but also, as Yvonne said, that we can keep and remember as we move forward. I had everybody at the camp sign my shirt at the end of it as a really big memento. And yeah, some of them signed it right across the front there. But so it was really exciting.
Fantastic. It puts everybody on the same plane. And that's really important because you are on the same plane. And I think that's sort of what we've heard today. And this has been a really fantastic conversation. I've really appreciated it. I think we pretty much have gone time. So I did want to make sure I took a moment to thank everybody here for being here today and for being part of something that is clearly making a difference. I think each time we have the opportunity to think about how what we do integrates into and complements or supports others and gives them strength, we all grow stronger. There's no question about that. And I think you've all just given us prime examples of that. Congratulations to you all for all your work to date. It'll certainly be great to hear how things go with PARN going forward. And with that, I would like to thank everybody for being here today. So everybody maybe give a little wave and I'll say thanks again for joining us.